Yes. Yeah. Okay, I have actually
Yes.
given you permission to share screen as well. Okay. Sochi, you want to play the ASIT song or are you on?
You
I,
just play then because we can't sing together one. We just have to sing with mute.
so never mind lah, we don't sing today lah. Okay. Um, Welcome everybody. We have Ezekiel. The reason why it's on Thursday, right, is because he just returned from US and then we managed to catch hold of him, and then he's going off. So we have so many programs on from SAC. So I told him, you know what, we just try lah. Today we actually shifted to 8:30 because there was a women's ministry art Bible journaling. And he was very kind to say, okay, we'll shift to 8:30 to ensure more people can join us. All right, so some of us jump over from the other side to come and hear him. I just wanted to say a big thank you to him because he was one of those very gung-ho young people who is still studying and willing to share his experience while studying and also sharing with us his aspiration. I hope more young people step up. We never will be perfect, but I think we are good enough to share where we are and what we are planning to do because time change, right? An era change, and we would like to know what are the young people thinking, and then we can all keep together. Yeah. So I'll pass the time to Riri Prasto to open us in prayer, and then after that, I will pass. I think a lot of you know who is Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel, a lot of you know a lot of them here.
Yes.
Okay, never mind. I'll do a short profile of him later. Okay, Prasto, can I pass it to you for opening prayer?
Amen.
We read Prasto.
Okay. So I thought we were gonna have an opening song first or something like that. Then it's fine. All right. So let us pause for a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity that this tonight we have get together in this Zoom meeting to listen, experience testimony of our young people, Ezekiel, who is now still pursuing his study in the US. We pray, the Lord, that tonight will be beneficial for each one of us and give us a new perspective and gain experience, and also will enrich our life. We'd like to surrender this time. We pray that your Holy Spirit will be present in our midst. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay. Maybe I'll let Ezekiel introduce himself. I think it's more accurate. Yeah. Okay, Ezekiel, I'll pass the time to you. You can do anything.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone. Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me to to ASI and to sharing. I understand that there are not necessarily a lot of young people who have shared, and while I have only gone so far in life, I'm definitely kind of happy to just kind of just share my experience so far and everything, and just to kind of see what the young people are up to, and if anything to also kind of share to other young people, my personal journey as I've just been kind of figuring out what I want to do in life. So just for those who are perhaps not as the most familiar with currently where I am right now. So just a little bit of background more about myself. So I grew up in the US and I came to Singapore in like 2010 around there, and I stayed here for about a decade. And then after that, I went back to the US to continue my studies in college. So right now I am currently studying at La Sierra University in Southern California. I am a film major, specifically film and TV production is what they call it. And I also study music as well as my minor. So I'm focused more on music composition. So in addition to my current track, I just completed my second year, moving on to my third year after this summer break. So in addition to that, I also am working. I work in kind of two positions currently. Right now, I'm kind of a production. I work in media production with the Loma Linda University Church in Loma Linda, and I also work on campus as basically I work with the chaplain's office as kind of a student leader. So I specialize particularly in media amongst the team. So that's just kind of a bit more about myself. And I would say also just to share what I aim to be, and what are some projects I'm currently working on, just to kind of give more context. So I think for me, I definitely have a personal passion for kind of outward facing ministry. I would really love to just kind of be able to work in the outside world and to do creative things over there. I'm personally interested in writing, directing, and I would love to do my own stories. And because I also do music composition, I've actually composed for some of my projects, and it would be kind of interesting to kind of like work on projects in that way where I'm able to control like so much of like the project where I write, direct, but I also kind of create the music for it as well. I definitely would be, I'm personally interested in moving into perhaps independent film, which is more of like, like your smaller budget, like live action film with real actors. I also am considering whether like perhaps documentaries, like, like are things that I might be interested in doing, taking a personal interest in other people's stories and, just like sharing it with other people. But I think for some of my biggest projects, and like, I think the most complicated or interesting stories that I want to tell, I'm actually interested in perhaps actually completing them in perhaps animation or something like that. So I might slowly be interested in moving towards like writing and directing and perhaps composing for animation as well. So these are just kind of like my current aspirations and like kind of where I hope to be heading in. Right now, some projects that I have actually worked on, some of you may have seen it or have heard of it, that I actually kind of produced and created a little short film just over like 2 minutes long, and I'll actually be sharing that later. So this is something that that I managed to actually premiere at like an Adventist Film Festival over here, and I got an award over there. And I also have been submitting it to like outside festivals, like like international ones and also nearby ones. And I have actually gotten a couple of accolades and nominations as well. So moving forward from that small project, I have bigger films that I have written and planned out that I'll start to work on for this coming year. I have like, a 7-minute short film, a more robust 20-minute short film. And I even have an idea that might become a feature film, which is, your full, perhaps like 1.5, 2 hour level, like big movie. And that will be interesting if I manage to make that happen. But these are currently some projects that I'm working on. So yeah, as Auntie Carolyn was saying, like I'm still young, and obvious disclaimers that I haven't figured everything out, but I'm happy for all the experiences that I've had so far, and I'm definitely interested in sharing everything with you. So what my sharing today would be, I think, is probably kind of going to take up more or less like 3 different parts. The first part is just kind of, just to share like how did I end up choosing, choosing film, choosing media as something that I want to do. I think that's always the interesting story, how we've kind of come to where we think we want to go towards. And I'll also be sharing a little bit more about my work and education experience that I've had so far, which is not a lot, but still something. And also I will be also sharing lastly on like how my spirituality and, like on my spiritual worldview and everything, how it impacts the stories that I have told and the stories that I want to tell. So yeah, just moving on to the first thing, like how did I end up actually becoming like choosing to move into film and in media and everything. So ever since I was young, I've always been immersed quite well into the arts. Many of you are familiar that I played a violin, like that's something I've definitely been known for in Singapore for quite a while. So I've played in orchestra a lot, and music has been something that I grew up in. And honestly, it was the first kind of art that I really had picked up. I also was really passionate about drawing. I love to draw. I would also kind of like write, and I would write stories. I had like many little stories that I wrote since I was young, and these were things that I kind of just always had within me. But ever since I came to Singapore, we all know that over here that there is a greater emphasis on STEM. So like all these things for me were largely hobbies for a lot of my later academic life. So when I started studying higher education in Singapore, I moved all the way into STEM because, that was a path that, like provided a lot of opportunities. So I focused all the way into, triple science, physics, chemistry, biology, math, everything. And that was kind of like the academic journey that I had begun to take. But it wasn't something that was fulfilling for me, my school, if those of you who know that I went to ACSI, it can be quite competitive at times. And for a lot of my academic journey, there was a lot of pressure, like to perform, and a lot of people would be very competitive. And like I had classmates that actually would that literally have burned and have double crossed other people, like just to kind of like get the edge or something, or get a leadership position on a project or things like that. And I had been a victim of some of these these experiences as well, and they were definitely difficult, like, you know, for me to kind of just like understand why people would want to do this. So I had a lot of like that kind of academic experience, you know, and gradually as I kind of like moved on and things got harder, there was a part of me that realized that, you know, like I don't feel like this is for me, or like, you know, all these subjects that I've studied, though I was doing pretty all right in them, like they really weren't things that I was passionate about, you know, like, and so by the time I moved to my last 2 years of like in JC, I actually wanted to transition back and maybe perhaps find things that I was really more passionate in. So I actually made several transitions back towards the arts and the humanities as well. And I think subjects that really stood out to me that I took at a pretty high level in JC were actually literature. I took philosophy as well. That was something that I think is quite has been quite like, you know, like impactful even to me right now. And I also like, you know, although I studied music a decent bit, I actually moved to the other ones. I actually took art as well. I took literature. So I kind of like, and I even joined drama, you know, so I kind of just diversified, really just like used that time to kind of explore a little, like, you know, within what I could in my academics and see if, you know, like these fields really were for me. And yeah, and that kind of like that really, I think just being able to kind of like study those things, it kind of did lead me into a direction that I felt that, yeah, I think I'm actually a lot more passionate about these things. And, you know, then that was a moment where I wanted to seriously consider, you know, like you know, like people can always do creative things or art things as like a passion or a hobby or a side project, but is it something that I truly wanted to take, you know, seriously, and one that I wanted to consider to be as a part of my career? So when I finished college, you know, and I moved into NS, I wasn't completely sure of what I wanted to do per se. You know, like I knew that there were certain creative talents that I was good at. I would always tell people there were these like kind of trifecta of 3 things that we're good at. You know, I mentioned like, you know, writing, music, and art. These 3 things were like basically probably my best creative skills and things that I was at least quite knowledgeable in, also even the academic or historical aspects of like these fields. So, but, you know, like at that point, I still kind of wanted to do everything, you know, like I didn't know whether there was something within all these 3 different things that I could settle down in. And so that's why I was perfectly comfortable just taking time, you know, in national service to just kind of like do work and everything. And that was also when the pandemic hit for me. So that was a time that I really kind of like continued to reflect as I did my service, as I did my work, and how and what exactly did I kind of like want to make out of these creative things. So at some point there came a realization for me that that, you know, like all these different creative things actually come together in like one specific field, and that field is like film and media. You know, like in like film, you have costumes, you have music, you have like, you know, your sound, you have your visuals, you have like, you know, you have the story that you have to write, basically, like, you know, like all of the different things that I've already learned, you know, in different ways, in drama and music and like, you know, in film and art, like all these different technical skills or these creative skills kind of came together in this one place. And I was like, like, you know, like what if I actually consider that really seriously? And that was kind of when I made the decision that what if I actually decided to study film and really kind of like learn, because, you know, like I had a lot of creative ideas. And like one thing that I always struggled with was that, like, you know, like I had these cool ideas, but I didn't know how to make them happen. But like, you know, studying film and internalizing a lot of this modern technology, all these skills, you know, like, and like, you know, these hard skills, you know, like not only would they perhaps allow me to get jobs, because, you know, like having these hard skills would still allow me to get jobs, even though I would not be able to, even if like the creative side of things might not be fully formed out yet, but also it will give me all these necessary skills that will allow me to actually, you know, make all my ideas happen beyond just being, you know, like just someone with like all these creative ideas and not really sure how to do it. So that was kind of where it guided me into perhaps taking the plunge in not only moving into the arts, but also to kind of like move overseas. You know, like most of you might be familiar that my parents are still in Singapore, and I actually made the plunge to actually just, you know, like live overseas, be independent and everything. And that really was kind of like a big decision for me, you know, like in kind of like as I wanted to move out and just kind of like and just figure things out for myself. So yeah, that was kind of like how like I kind of gradually moved in this direction. And after my national service, I began to start my college experience. So one interesting thing though in like my experience in film is that actually my film department, in all honesty, actually is kind of struggling at the moment. You know, like the pandemic hasn't been kind to like everyone. Enrollment is down in general. And I would say also that for the creative departments for my university in La Sierra in California, it has been lacking. And perhaps, you know, like there was already a gradual decline, you know, be it in like students enrollment over time. And the pandemic just kind of like, you know, like worsened a problem that really was already there. So by the time I went into my university, I actually realized that, like, you know, while I love the atmosphere, I love the community, you know, like, and everything, I found that, like, you know, the location and like having access to like food that was, you know, at least quite similar to like over here. I had enough Asian food that, like, you know, I wouldn't feel lost. There were many decisions that I felt that like going to this university and college was correct, but and like, you know, guided and like, you know, spiritually right. But at the same time, there were a lot of practical issues in my department that I realized that, like, you know, like there were things lacking, and I was wondering, and there came a point where I started to wonder how exactly this would, you know, how, like, you know, how would this like affect my academic journey and everything, you know, like how was I to learn if there was a lot of like these kinds of struggles and like issues going on, like, you know, like so right now I just finished my second year. Actually just recently, my in the past quarter, my some of my film classes actually were canceled because of like low enrollment. And just over this past summer, I learned actually just a month back that like the one of the two professors who like permanent professors who had been working there for quite a while, she actually took another job elsewhere. So right now my department, moving into the next school year, it's going to be an interesting dynamic because a lot of this department is like, you know, like not as healthy as it probably could be. So that being said, it kind of was like a very interesting, different experience compared to Singapore, because I was very used to being in, you know, high pressure environments and being, you know, pushed by the people around me or by the system or by professors, you know, to really like perform. But right now I was faced with a very different kind of struggle or a very different kind of situation where I had, you know, like there was no pressure for me, you know, like in fact, like a lot of things were unideal. But if I thought that this was a place that I needed to be, it was me who needed to step up and to kind of like find these opportunities for myself and like, you know, like, and perhaps that, you know, would have been valuable to like kind of how I would grow. And that in some sense is kind of what happened. So I was kind of saying earlier that I work with the chaplain's office on campus, and I also work with LUC. And actually like many of these opportunities that I had were actually what caused me to grow so much more than like my other peers, and like what has made me into like more like competent at the skills that I have, like, you know, from before. So for those who are kind of familiar with Loma Linda, there is like a really big church, the Loma Linda University Church. It has like at least like, you know, like a 5,000 strong members. It has like a really big, you know, like a really big kind of like church, it like physically the building, you know, like, and over the years they've really cultivated a tradition of like, you know, like valuing media and valuing like, you know, like production, you know, both on a contemporary and also on a traditional scale. And having actually being, and I was kind of privileged to like, you know, like eventually to make a connection with like the kind of media pastor over there, and he eventually allowed me to kind of intern over the summer. And ever since after that, I had been kind of like part-time helping out either on like the video editing on the back end, or just kind of like helping out for production stuff related to services, you know, like live production, or also like actual film production when we would do music videos or documentaries or things like that. So, you know, like thanks to like kind of the resources of this church being so big, I actually had many, and like, you know, the connections of some of these people to the actual, like the kind of like the film world as well. I had access to gear that like I would, and like, you know, technology that I never would have gotten the privilege to do, like, you know, if I just stayed like, you know, in my university and everything. Like we would be able to use cameras that were like $20,000, $50,000 worth, even like, you know, there's no way like you can like get these things normally. And like, you know, I had the privilege actually of working with many friends and colleagues who were actually alumni of my school. So actually, ever since the first year of college, I've been working with people who had already graduated from my program. And like the amount of knowledge that I just kind of like, you know, absorbed from them actually allowed me to just progress so much faster. And like, you know, like, and just kind of like really take on this, you know, like new passion that I had just kind of jumped into, you know, like, again, starting film is like, in some sense the same, but also completely different than like anything that I had done before. But I felt that a lot of what I was prepared to do kind of like fit me perfectly here as well. So yeah, and in addition to you know, like just finding outside work and everything to kind of like augment my educational experience, I think another very valuable thing was actually being on campus, like being a part of campus ministry itself. So like for that position that I had, I initially worked in both social media and media production. So social media, while I was familiar with graphic design, that's not entirely my favorite territory. And while I spent maybe about like half a year kind of setting things up, I was glad to be able to, you know, like form a team that could actually take on that thing so I could take on more of my roles so I could actually focus more on like media and other things. But beyond just like the technical aspect of, you know, helping people to kind of like put these things together and stuff like that, I think just like, you know, like being able to be one of the student leaders to actually like, you know, help out at like big events like orientation or like school events, or just, you know, like being a part of the services that we hold on campus, and like, you know, wherever I can, you know, like to be able to just to talk to people and everything. I think that has been so much more also equally as valuable for me as well. And yeah, so I think, you know, like if I wanted to get a good film education, honestly, I could get it somewhere else. But I think the reason why, despite, you know, the circumstances that in, why I still want to continue, you know, with my current path and at La Sierra University is because really, there's, I think, especially at this point of time, you know, like there are other things for me to learn that are valuable that aren't technical skills, because, you know, I could go outside and work and I could still learn these skills anyways, you know, like, you know, but actually being in this college experience, being able to relate to other people like me, being able to think about what I believe in, you know, to be a part of ministry, I think that actually has been so much more valuable to me. And that's why I kind of want to like continue with like this kind of like approach. So yeah, like moving on to that kind of last bit of like, you know, how does my spirituality and spiritual experience, how does that impact the stories that I want to tell? So for me, I think I've always had a desire to kind of do more outward facing ministry in some sense. You know, like many people, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, especially in the US, like many of my friends who kind of help out in the church a lot. They do videography for the church, you know, especially in those contemporary, more production heavy Adventist churches. You know, like, but I've always felt that like that wasn't really my thing. You know, I didn't just want to, you know, minister to people who are within my community. You know, like I really love telling stories. And I think that, you know, like, and I think that, you know, what if it was like my personal path to actually look beyond my community and perhaps in some sense represent my community and what they believe in, you know, or represent God, the Bible and everything. And like, you know, to be able to tell stories that are driven by our way of life or our philosophy and everything. And that was kind of like what I realized was kind of important for me that I wanted to kind of do as well. So so that kind of like spawned rather kind of like my like all, and that led to me like creating my current projects, you know, like in a rather interesting kind of light that maybe might run contrary to what is kind of conventionally expected in film. You know, I've seen like some other like Adventist and Christian projects who have approached like, you know, like these Christian-based projects like as you would approach kind of like film, you know, like there's like, you know, like we sometimes have that forward looking you know, there are apocalyptic aspects, you know, to what we believe in. And like, you know, I've seen projects or ideas that people, other Adventists have put out that kind of emphasize that, you know, but like through like the film kind of lens, you know, like really dialing out like the suspense, the epicness, you know, like, you know, and like, you know, the way like big budget blockbusters kind of do it. But I've kind of realized that I wanted to take a different approach, you know, like I think in my own personal and spiritual journey and experience, I've come to see how like, you know, the also deeply personal, emotional, and intuitive aspect of what we believe in, the idea of, you know, like ultimately what our faith is built upon is really like in a relationship with God, you know, spiritual growth and things like that. And I wanted to, you know, like really also emphasize these perspectives in the stories that I tell, and also just let that kind of shine in the way I told my stories and in the style of it as well. So I wanted to kind of share, like, you know, with you all, like, you know, the short film that I was talking about that I worked on, and I'll just kind of share a little bit of what motivated me to tell this story. And then I'll also share with you one more bigger project that I'm working on that kind of greater depicts, you know, like the kind of like approach and the kind of stories that I really want to tell. And yeah, and I guess that will kind of close out like my sharing and everything. So if you give me a second, I'll kind of pull up my short film and just share screen with you all. Okay. So this is a short film that I did. It's a short film about 2 minutes long. It's called The Right Move.
Ready?
好啊。
哪里可以? Since when can you move like that?
Why not?
不可以 The pal can't jump over like that, dude.
And what?
不可以
可以
不可以
Oh, now you know how to play Chinese chess.
It's not like you do you?
Well, not really, but just let go.
You let go.
No. Sheldon, Lalai, what's your problem? I just wanted to practice a little bit so that maybe we can beat Gong Gong this year.
Easy. Don't say I didn't warn you if Gong Gong scolds you later for playing the pal like that.
Oh, are you willing to bet your hongbao money that you're right?
Try me.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. So this is kind of a project that I worked on. It was I did it within the context of our class. It started out as a really simple thing. We were just supposed to film something that was 1 minute long. And but the project itself kind of like ballooned and grew bigger. And if you notice, I actually added completely original music composed by me. This was a project that I wrote and directed as well, and kind of filmed as well. Did a lot of it because it was just a small thing. And yeah, I had the privilege to work on this with some Malaysian friends that I had on campus, and that was kind of pretty much most of the people who came from Southeast Asia. So yeah, really what motivated me to kind of share this story, especially on campus with my friends over there, is that you can kind of see so much of Singaporean culture and everything, and Chinese culture as well, just kind of just all throughout the story. The main plot is based on the idea that two young people are kind of disconnected with their culture, and they really wanted to kind of make an effort to connect with their grandpa and their family, as well as kind of understand this game that is something that's part of their tradition. And so for me, I my campus is pretty diverse, but I'm the only person from Singapore, and even as I shared this with some of my friends, I wanted it to kind of be like a conversation starter, one that this was also filmed on campus, by the way. And but to really just show them these are people with who live, who have different lives, come from different traditions. In many of my conversations that I share with friends, I often have such a different perspective because I've spent half of my life in a different country. And while I understand American worldview and viewpoint, it's to be able to bring my approach to life and and everything, even all of us as Adventists, it's kind of really interesting how I can bring so much depth, and I guess by just kind of the way I grew up and everything. And I think beneath that, a very simple idea that I had begun to explore in this story, and I moved that I kind of just developed even more in some of my later works that I'm working on making, is the idea of what actually drives the story. Ultimately this story is a chess game. In chess, someone wins, someone loses, and there's, while this story is really short and sweet, there's this some sense of competition that's going on, like they're trying to win, they're trying to beat each other. And then, like they start, and then, but that like mission to win is kind of like, it's kind of interrupted by the fact that they actually don't know if like, a move that someone made is correct or not. And like, and as like that conflict begins and like, the argument reaches a point where like their pieces just get knocked off the table. Like the story leans into a different, like, a different aspect, kind of like revealing the idea of like, what were they actually here to do? Were they here to just win or just beat the other person in Chinese chess? But they actually were there to actually try and make a connection, like to someone else, like there's a certain sense you might hear it in the music that like, Chinese New Year is coming up and like, like they're going to probably have a family gathering and like, and they're going to try and play with their grandpa. And it's like, ultimately they wanted to be able to play better against him, maybe even beat him. And that was actually why they wanted to play that game, and rather than just trying to beat each other. So even in that story, there was a kind of emphasis on like, like connection, like human connection, and the idea that like we shouldn't just be like coming, like beneath the conflict of the story that, they're trying to beat each other at a game of chess. This is actually a deeper story of like, like I'm actually trying to connect with someone, and like, perhaps it's something that matters a little bit more. So yeah, so all these ideas, like as I kind of like briefly shared about like, like kind of like my spiritual growth since I came to college, and how that kind of like how that impacts my storytelling. I have like one more project which I'll kind of like briefly share about, or just like kind of briefly share the context about, and like, like why I felt like this was so important for me to make this story, like because I believe that, like as with film and media, like it's a like, when you watch a film, like you're basically absorbed in it, like or a TV show, you're basically absorbed in it, if it's good for however long that, like it is, for that half an hour, for that 1 hour. It's like, you're almost holding people in your hands and like their attention, their thoughts. And it's like, this is a very powerful medium that can influence people for better or for worse. And when I kind of realized that, I wanted to be able to be very intentional with telling stories in a way that kind of like that really touched people or connected with people in a way that I thought was like Christ-like, and like, like, and what we should be doing as like, in a form of ministry. So actually it was kind of a tragedy that happened right when I came to campus, when I started my first year, because I had barely spent 4 weeks on campus in person, when actually a friend or like kind of like a student, like, like that kind of stayed on campus, like he actually died by suicide. And this person, he just stayed a couple doors from me. I was very physically close to him. In fact, I was kind of there, like in my room when it happened. And just kind of like to be in this close proximity to it was like, a very difficult experience. But at the same time, I didn't feel, I wasn't close to this person yet because, I had just barely gone to campus. But I really felt the loss, in the community and everything, and how everyone was kind of like struggling to work with this. And I had a friend, he was actually close friends with this person who had passed away. And he wrote a song that kind of like, like that was his way of kind of just like trying to heal, trying to move on. And, like in that song, the lyrics of the song go where he has a dream. And in that dream, he dreamt that he went to heaven, he was able to meet his friend, like, one last time, to have that moment of closure and conversation, but for some reason, when he woke up, he had forgotten that dream. And for me, just to kind of see, like, like another creative person, like, respond to tragedy in that way, to try and channel, like, like the grief and the sorrow into something creative, and in some ways be able to touch other people who are trying to also heal from this, that really struck me as well. And I asked myself, like, what am I here to do? Like, I'm here on my college campus. I'm here for the next next 3-4 years. Like, are these not the moments that should spawn the stories that I want to say? And that idea that that kind of event that happened, like, 2 years ago, has basically spawned an entire story that I had written, like kind of response to this as well. Because, like, I thought that as a creative person, I'm a person who sometimes can, like when we tell stories, we can express like the inexpressible sometimes, these like raw human emotions and feelings. And, like if it's a way that I can bring, like use my ability to tell stories, or like, create films to, connect people together, to like kind of bring them together to kind of aid healing, and to really just kind of, and to kind of like, yeah, to be able to impact people in that way, it's like to kind of breathe perhaps hope, like into a tragedy that happens on campus. Why would I not be, like, this is exactly what I should be doing. So yeah, like, like this is like, a project that had been so close to my heart that I've been working on for like the past year or so. And I'm excited to kind of like, move forward, like, from here to be able to work on like projects like that in the future. So yeah, this is basically just, short, I guess, like, a short little glimpse into kind of like my whole experience, how I ended up choosing film, like kind of just the different kind of work experiences and campus experiences I had. And also, yeah, just a little glimpse into kind of like the projects that I've done and the projects that I hope to work on and what really, and just kind of like, just why it all matters for me. So yeah, that's kind of all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ezekiel. You're not going to show us the song?
I don't actually have a copy of that. Yeah, but definitely I would be like, once that is going to be my next year's project, and I'm definitely excited to kind of like send it over in this direction when I complete that project. But yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm really great. I'm really awed by what you did, because I think nowadays you're just not only a musician, you have to be a production house, you have to be everything under one roof, right? And I remember when I was young, I wanted to do drama. I was interested in literature, and then I was interested in writing as well as art, and I became an account servicing and advertising firm, right? And it was like, okay, in SDA in the past, you cannot get involved in drama, right? And then in the end, I became a mom, and then I had to give up my dream. And then finally, I landed up in social sector. And then in the end, I landed up going back to psychodrama. Okay, and you are doing what you are dreaming of. And I like, wow, this is really exciting, the new era. And it's very interesting, your 2-minute film. Like what you say, there's a conflict beneath another conflict, and connection, another layer of connection. I think this layering on top of one another layering is a lot. I think nowadays in movies, they are doing that a lot. Yeah, and it's very, very rich. Yeah, so I really, pray that your next production will be very touchy, because it has a lot of humanism and human factor. Yeah. Thanks a lot for your sharing. I really appreciate it. I now will throw open to the floor. Any question and answer? Yeah, any question, and then maybe the floor can help to respond as well. Yeah, and Ezekiel will be you have the first right to the answer, yeah? Anyone else? Any comment? Yeah, even if it's not a question, yeah. Okay, David Jackson Tan, yeah. Can we hear you? Can hear you, yeah.
Thanks, Ezekiel, for sharing your experiences. And the short film is actually very good. As Caroline has said, it has layers, and which is very, very, very interesting to watch and be surprised. So my question is, how can you, during this 3 years in campus, or 4 years, to be able to come up with a series of short films suitable for TikToks and YouTube's, like 2-3 minutes type of creation that deals with the various beliefs or doctrines. It's like a Bible study that when they watch, at the end of it, they have grasp of what your beliefs are, or what the Christian beliefs are, or Adventist beliefs are, without being offensive, and just informative through acting. Is that something that you think worthwhile to work towards, or not? Does it appeal to your generation?
Yeah. I would definitely say that, yeah, like, it's like, short form content, like, be it on like Instagram or TikTok with like reels and everything. those things have become like so big nowadays. It's kind of funny because like while I'm in media, like that actually is something that I'm personally actually quite out of touch of, like myself as well. Like I just personally have never really been a big fan of like just kind of these shorter form media, because I'm like, it's just not really my thing. So it's like, like, and even in terms, so like, yeah, but like, like, it definitely has been interesting for me to kind of consider, because, even in my work as like a student, like, my work with like campus ministry, what it means to kind of like work on like higher level production content, like versus like, like all these like shorter content, because, like that film was just 2 minutes long, but like, like, the effort spent on it, like we spent a day filming it, and definitely like a couple of weeks, like working on the music, like, and everything, just putting everything together amongst like my other homework and everything. So like, yeah, like, like the content that I like to create is definitely a lot more like, it takes a lot more effort to make and everything. And definitely to kind of like transition that, or to be able to do that realistically, like, like for like a campus, but like, with like short form content, I've definitely attempted to do things like that, but that definitely has been a lot more difficult. But I think another dimension of what I'm interested, or what I've kind of like done that like I think has been perhaps more like relevant, I think, rather than leading more into storytelling, I think like just kind of like I've leaned more into like, more documentary style stuff, where it's like, we hear sharings from people, like be it just like other students, or like, like the chaplains or things like that, that I kind of like, that, we kind of like share with like the rest of the campus community. Like, yeah, like there are definitely a lot of like, like Adventist influencers, like I'm familiar, and actually I've met a couple of them who like post a lot of like short form content. And like, it's like definitely wonderful. And also like, at the same time, it's like, like how can we, there's some parts of what we believe in that are like, perhaps it is easy to actually condense into like, into like a short, like couple second, 30-second video. But then also like, there's some things that are really, they're not so easy to explain in like those like moments. And like, I've also personally seen many like content that other people have posted that it's like, like they're very sound bitey. They give you a very, like definite answer to like, or like a very short and sweet answer that might not even like truly encapsulate kind of like the actual issue at hand. So like, definitely it's kind of an interesting balance for me to kind of consider and see other people's content and how that works, and like, what it's not, it's like, it's really not like simple. And I definitely applaud the people who put in the effort to try and do ministry, like, through the short form content way as well. But yeah, like, like for me, like, like I definitely am personally interested in more of like the longer form stuff, like, and like, more on storytelling, less on that. But I think I've definitely had a lot of experience with that, and it's kind of interesting to see how like those kind of work. And I definitely have like some plans, even this like, coming into this quarter, whether like that, like my office wants to work on like podcasts or things like that, or like kind of short videos to post to our Instagram. Like, like it definitely is kind of like, it's interesting, like how that works out. And like it definitely had to have been a team effort from like, not just me as a creative person, but the rest of my team, especially like, chaplains and other people who are perhaps more experienced with like, the theological aspect of things, to kind of like put our skills together and to be able to like kind of like make content like this that can be fruitful for our community.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's a team effort to put everything together. I actually like your music. Yeah, because you say you spent half of your life in America and not in Chinese culture. Then how come your first film is so Chinese and your music is so Chinese?
Yeah, so that's actually quite interesting, because I had my music studies to actually thank for that, because when I studied music over here, like I basically of course learned like things from the classical music perspective and everything, but we actually had a couple of like modules or classes on like so-called world music, or like, classical music of different cultures. So not only did I learn like Chinese music per se, I also am quite familiar with like, Indonesian, like, gamelan, or like, like a couple of like the different like genres of like, like classical, like Malay music, and also like, both like North Indian and South Indian, like classical, like music as well. So because of kind of like that familiarity of like, oh, like, like I understand these instruments, or like, I recognize these sounds, I actually kind of was like, yeah, like, like I know the right instruments that I can perhaps use or bring in to kind of like evoke this certain idea. So because I was familiar with instruments, you know, and currently, you know, I'm working with a small team or just by myself. So a lot of my like those compositions that I made were kind of like they were made actually from digital instruments, but I managed to edit it pretty well that like it still is quite convincing. But yeah, like I really actually have to thank like just education and, you know, being able to study and like and everything. And I think it brought so much more that, you know, like there was kind of a like to have like a musical style that kind of suited the story. And also like I, you know, like there was actually like a part, you know, like even just to like being like it's kind of really fun to be able to like understand music and actually like add that, like, you know, to think of that even as you're kind of writing your story, because you might notice that like, you know, like at that moment where after like the chess board gets knocked off the table, like the music just changes, like, you know, for like a brief moment it takes on a very different quality, you know, like if any of you are familiar with Studio Ghibli, which is actually a Japanese animation studio, they made a lot of famous films actually from like the 80s, like the 90s and early 2000s. But yeah, like, you know, it like the kind of style of music that like, you know, they lean into, it was I kind of was kind of like I composed something somewhat similar to like that kind of style, because like their films tend to be more like pensive, thought-provoking, you know, like, and rather spiritual, perhaps not necessarily in a Christian way, but like, you know, like in the way that really they kind of see life and everything. And I was kind of like nice to really kind of like evoke that, or just understand how like, you know, like shifting that music or like having that different tone would kind of like bring impact to like kind of like that scene. So it's nice to kind of do that. And I'm anticipating doing that at a bigger scale for a lot of my future projects, but just to kind of think really like hard about like how does like music actually kind of like can like kind of like fit into all of this and everything. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else has any comment? Rasto, Ben, even your dad and your mom, right? Claire.
Okay, let me ask some question then. All right. I do enjoy the video. Actually, I watched that when your father featuring it in his sermon. So it's,
oh, did he?
I think your parents actually is very proud of you. Just to let you know, okay. Let me ask you a few questions. Yeah. You know, when Jacqueline spent for her summer study at UCLA in Berkeley, because he took film study. He's majoring in marketing in NTU, and he graduated already now. When she took that, the most of the lecturers, the visiting lecturers are coming from Hollywood, and they tell you how ridiculous the work in Hollywood is. So now my question to you is: are you aspiring to work in Hollywood, or you will work in Adventist organization to be a director of Hope Channel or whatever, or you're gonna be independent, become a TikToker or YouTuber, something like that? And that's my first question about your work in the future. And secondly is related to your faith journey. You think it will enhance your faith, or you feel that it's going to be challenging?
Yeah, so for your first question, I did kind of share about it briefly like just now, but there was a reason why I personally take an interest. For example, I was saying in like, oh, maybe I want to focus on independent film, or I want to focus on documentaries, or like I was saying, I want to focus on animation. Like, you know, like I kind of like had these specific interests in mind, because like I actually, I had an opportunity to actually kind of check out some of the studios or that kind of life. And I realized pretty quickly that, I don't know, I don't like, while I was interested, as I was saying, in perhaps doing more work like outside of the Adventist church personally, like I also realized that like, you know, like there are many dimensions of the film world that perhaps this is just not my style, or I didn't want to do this. I think the main thing for me is that like, you know, like as I was saying, like I want to be a writer director because I have so much control over my stories. You know, like I want to be very, very intentional with like, how do I craft a story? Like, you know, what drives these characters, and how does that reflect like, you know, like the spiritual aspects of things. And like, you know, like I can't truly do that if I'm just caught up in like, you know, like really like too like, you know, caught up in like a bigger machine and everything. You know, and let's say, you know, if I had to, you know, like in order to work my way up to the top and everything, you know, like to just be stuck in that world, you know, it's like you would just be churning out project after project, and some of them might not be like, you know, like the kind of content that I personally want to do. And like, you know, I quickly realized that life is not for me. So definitely like, you know, like there's no easy path, you know, like as with many of these creative things. Well, I have, you know, fallbacks to like work within the Adventist church. I definitely want to aspire to perhaps be able to like share stories beyond that, you know, like, and that would definitely have to be on a project by kind of project basis and everything. So you know, as I was saying, like I was saying my interest in animation, you know, like places like, for example, Pixar, or like, you know, there are many different, you know, studios or particular places of a certain creative like aesthetic, you know, like emphasis on certain values that I think are places that better suit me. And like, you know, like be it just kind of like, I definitely have like plans to kind of like apply or like send things their way, you know, like, and even as I kind of like get like my films out there and like the festivals and everything, like just kind of like slowly kind of like figuring out which are places that would like kind of actually support me and everything. So yeah, like I definitely acknowledge that, like, you know, being, and kind of like in response to your second question, that like being in the film world like can both build up my faith or can also break down my faith depending on the kind of place that I am. So there definitely has been, and many, and you know, like it's really important to kind of like work with the right people, you know, like even though like even with like the other people who you work with, like maybe even your cinematographer or your writer, or like, you know, other people who help you out, like, you know, like I think just making those right connections, and even though they may be part of the Adventist church, or they might not, but just to be able to work with the right people who understand what you're going for and everything, that's something that I definitely want to have been working to do, because like, you know, these connections are valuable, and those are the people who will help build you up and help to kind of like make your project better. So yeah, like I acknowledge that, like, you know, in order to really let this be ministry, it's like I need to have a rather, for example, actually like crazy almost amount of creative control over the things that I do, if I really want to be intentional with it. And I acknowledge that, you know, it is definitely a privilege to have that, to be able to like work with that, and also, for example, have like the funding to be able to work on bigger projects. So definitely right now, just kind of like branching out, like, you know, like sending my things here and there. Like I was saying, I'm banking on like, you know, bigger project, like my 20-minute short film, or like, you know, or perhaps even that feature film idea, you know, and seeing where these projects goes. And like, you know, like I'm confident, you know, like that there are, even like outside of like the Adventist church, that there are people who like that, who might take an interest in the way that I personally tell my stories. And that, you know, like just being able to make those right connections, and to be really just to put yourself out there, and just like, you know, even with all my future work that I do, just send them here and there, and look for right places within and like beyond the Adventist church that would kind of be open, and to kind of like hearing stories being told in this style and everything. Yeah.
Cool. You sound very confident, which is, I think that will be halfway through to your success. So congratulations for that. Now I have a final question for you.
Yes.
If there is an opportunity open in Singapore, would you aspire looking back to Singapore, or you will settle down in US forever?
That is I would actually say, like, if I were to speak from an ambitious kind of perspective, I would love to, like, because the way that I've kind of grown my faith and everything is kind of in a way where I would love to be able to share my faith with people who are like completely different from me, you know, like be able to talk to people from different religious traditions. And that kind of means that I would love to be able to make content around the world, you know, like travel perhaps, you know, like in everything, you know, like I've had opportunity, you know, and like I would love to be able, like, you know, like I have learned about like so much like cultural music or things like that, you know, like in my studies, or made these connections with like other people from across the world. And like I would love to perhaps be able to do that, you know, like actually in the future. So with that kind of like mindset or like approach, I would definitely, like, I feel connected to kind of like the environment over there in the US. And like I'm definitely interested in making that, I would say, like my home base, or, you know, a place where I can kind of set up and establish myself. But I'm definitely interested in kind of like being able to just do projects in different places, and like, you know, let my work actually kind of like bridge gaps around the world and things like that, if, you know, I am able to reach that level. And like, you know, I am definitely willing to kind of work in that direction. So, but yeah, with that in mind, you know, like I'm clearly, like, you know, regardless of, my parents are from Singapore, you know, Singapore is my cultural home. I'm very connected with Southeast Asian and Singaporean culture. You know, Singapore will always be my cultural home, even if it's not my physical home. And I'm definitely open towards like, you know, being able to like do projects that involve Singapore and things like that, you know, and to be able to come back and work on things. And, you know, I'm definitely open, like, you know, who knows if that actually perhaps working in Singapore is an option in the future. Who knows? I don't want to be, I've kind of been a person not truly tied to any particular place. So I'm definitely interested to see where, you know, like life might take me and everything. Because yeah, even some of my bigger ideas, actually, like that feature film idea, I had some of like parts of it that are written to be actually take place in Singapore. So it's like, you know, like I want to be able to kind of bridge those gaps in some of like, you know, like in some of my stories as well, and like to kind of perhaps be like represent Singapore within like, you know, like the Western Hollywood context, you know, if that's an option that I can, that, or a privilege that I get to take. Like, yeah.
Thank you, Ezekiel. All the best.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else want to ask me any comment? Lillian, Claire, Corina, Agnes, Cynthia, Eric, Sue, Margaret, Anthony, Ben, Don.
Maybe I can just make a quick comment. In a very small way, I just went to study diploma in music production, post production, and also some videography. So I can understand, I can see the amount of work you put in for the 2.5 minutes. For those who doesn't know, to do the 2.5 minutes is like many days of hard work, editing after editing, frame by frame kind of editing. And I can see that your short feature film is not so much just the telling of story. You can actually see the emotions of those actors and actresses behind it, right? And the jealousy and the fighting going on. It's not so easy to capture it and portray it in the movie or in a short film even. So I want to congratulate you that you've done very good for this. And I guess that's the reason why you won for the small short feature film in this area. But I think your direction seems to be the correct one. Well done on that. I think as you grow on, you probably will take on bigger and bigger role. And I think Singapore, of course, I wish that you can come back to Singapore to do something for Singapore. But I think Singapore is a very small market. For those who know, Jack Neo is probably the only guy
Yeah,
who made
yeah.
it in Singapore. But his topic is always current affairs and what is the closest at heart for Singaporeans living here. But the Singapore market is only 5.5 million people, so it's pretty hard to get a real good talent. And even the media corp is getting very hard pressed to look for new talent. Every year you see the Star Awards, always the same old people, and then they allow them to only win 10 years of award, then they retire them forever, you know what I mean? So I think the market is too small here. So I wish you all the best that you can explore elsewhere. I mean, your mind is really open to the rest of the world. Maybe not even limited to US. Maybe you can even look for China, because perhaps that's where God may want to bring you there to explain your story, to tell your story, to spread the good news to the rest of China, which is a very big market over there. I mean, perhaps even going to India, because these are the two most populous nation in the whole planet. So I wish you all the best, and I hope you continue to listen to God and where He takes you, because I think that's the most important. Because whatever you do, He will bless you and multiply you in all your works. Yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Anthony.
you.
Anybody else? You only have 2 minutes left. Yeah, to wish you all the best as well. Why not we do this? Can we just switch on your video and then we just take a picture together? Is it okay, all of you? No, nobody want to take. Yeah, I'll switch on your video. Yeah, and then we can take a picture together. And then wish him all the best. Really want to thank him for being so brave. Yeah, and I think he will set a role model for all the young people to come forward to share what they have shared up to today. Yeah. Okay, so let's smile. 1, 2, 3. All right. And then maybe yeah, hi Cherry. Yeah. Lillian, maybe you can close us all in prayer. Yeah, thank you so much, Ezekiel. Yeah. And we wish you all the best. Yeah. Lillian cannot. Yeah.
Did you ask me?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Ezekiel, you can come to Ballister and do 2-minute clips of us. You are welcome. Okay? You are welcome. Okay, let us pray. Gracious God in heaven, we continue to praise your name, for you are God. You are our Father whom we trust and place our confidence. We thank you for Ezekiel and his zest for life and his work that he's doing. May you continue to bestow wisdom upon him to guide him in his journey as he continues to remain close to you and to be your shining light and beacon of hope to those who are searching for Jesus. For the rest of us, O Lord, we pray that we will continue to be your disciples until Jesus comes again. Please bless us with your infinite love, grace, and mercy, and dismiss us with thy blessings this evening. For I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, all of you. Yeah, thank you for spending the evening with us. Thank you. See you all. See you on Saturday or Friday Sabbath school training. Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye, all of you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to probably record the thing and then put it on YouTube, and then we'll send everybody the link. Those who missed your talk, a lot of people asking for the link. All right, Ezekiel, we'll send you the link too. Okay, thanks everybody for coming. Eric and Cynthia, okay, never switch on your video. Your son talking, no. Huh? You're not there. Are you all at home? 3 of you at home, right? They're very proud of you, so that's why they're hiding. Okay, bye-bye.